When I start shooting, all y'all gonna clear out.
There's an idea going around the player base, and I think it's a fascinating one. The idea is that the final character of season 2, the new challenger, will be Marduk's successor. First thing you got to say about Marduk is that we've been talking about this guy for over a year, almost 2. He was one of the original characters that leaked with Tekken 8, going all the way back to the beta. We found like 60% of his move list in the game, which made Harada issue a tweet responded to all of it, where he was basically claiming that it was old information that is soon to be deleted and don't worry about it. But then when the game actually released, not only did we see that same information in there, but we saw more of it. We saw more of Marduk. We saw now his name, we saw his country of origin, and even his fighting style. At the same time, we saw leaks for many other characters, a lot of which are now coming to the game. Lydia, she was there. Eddie, there was stuff of him there. Fakamram, he was all over the place. The fact that all of these other characters who leaked came true, players are once again looking at Marduk and saying his time is basically now. I think he either is going to be the character who starts off season 3, or if we're unlucky, or maybe we are lucky, he will be the final character of season 2. The first thing you have to talk about is how the colors matches up pretty much perfectly. And also, as a side note, a lot of players are speculating whether or not the new character will be a male or female. On that note, if you look at the previous 3 new characters that we got for Tekken 8, you have 2 females and 1 male, Reina, Azazina, and Victor. So if they do a 4th, it makes sense for it to be a male character so you could balance out the new 2 and 2. But that's just my own idea, but if you follow that path, it does lead towards this final character being a male, and then if you connect the color to Marduk, one could say it's going to be a successor. But the real reason why players is walking this path is because of Armor King, the character right next to him. The story of Armor King and Marduk is a very long one, but to just summarize it as easily as possible, Marduk is the person who killed the original Armor King. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the second Armor King, the one we have now, is the original Armor King's brother, and he took up the mantle and he swore revenge against Marduk. Now these two has been fighting back and forth, a petty rivalry for like 8 games. You have some King sprinkled in there as well, but all 3 of these characters, as well as JC, they've been going back and forth for all of Tekken. And in Tekken 7, when they were both introduced in Season 2, the story that we were given with both of these characters is that they would fight one final time. But to add more pressure to the whole situation, they came up with an agreement. If Armor King loses, he takes off the mask. If Marduk loses, he retires. Now, surprise, surprise, Armor King still has his mask on. There is this weird idea that I think is super interesting, that Armor King is actually Marduk. Like Marduk beat Armor King, took his mask, took his attire, and then at EVO, the true reveal of Marduk will be shown. If the developers did that, that would be wild because we never seen a reveal like that in fighting games, period. But I think since Marduk is such a disfavorable character in comparison to Armor King, of course people will hate it. But forgetting about the theories of Armor King actually being Marduk in disguise and just focusing on Marduk's part of the story where it said that if he loses, he will retire, this is where things gets interesting. If Armor King actually does beat Marduk, then Marduk technically should not be in Tekken 8. Now, the developers could go this weird direction that we've seen them go before, where the fight between these two is delayed, it's stalled, it's canceled. I mean, how many times have Yoshimitsu and Brian Fury been set to fight to the death, but then all of a sudden something happens and both the characters don't meet? We've seen this happen for many characters who have rivalries, and they could very well do the same thing to Marduk and Armor King, like, oh, their whole rivalry was interrupted by the Mishima feud. That's like the go-to plot line to delay characters' story and their progression as much as possible. But let's just assume that the developers won't do that. Let's just assume that the developers will commit to the idea of these two characters fighting and there will be one winner. Let's assume that that winner is Armor King and Marduk is forced to retire. Now, Marduk, I would say, plays a big role in Tekken and what Tekken is supposed to be. And I do think his fighting style being gone would be kind of sad. But what if the developers were able to salvage what made Marduk Marduk, but also add new things to him and bring him back in a new way as a new character. Just the concept of a Marduk successor would be pretty interesting, because how similar will their personalities be? How similar will their fighting styles be? Will you lose Marduk entirely, or will he be very much like Marduk but just with a different take on him? But I think the real thing that's important to highlight here is how this trope of a successor, of a child, of a replacement character is used endlessly in Tekken, but also it never works. We have never seen a character replace another character and it end well. People always prefer the original character over the successor. And you end up in this weird place where you have some people who want the new and some people who want the old. I mean, think about Kunimitsu, Bruce Fakerman. We had this happen so many times before, and Marduk would be no different. And I think for that reason, maybe the developers wouldn't go down this route, because they never did it successfully. And I think that is something that they probably should steer clear of. And also, I will just say this, that I think it would be more exciting if the new character was just totally new. I kind of hate how the Tekken story is revolving around the same plots, the same characters, the same ideas. What I really love about Tekken is their ability to add new characters into the fray and expand on the world that we know. When all of these characters are intertwined and intermingling, it makes the world feel very small, more like a high school than an actual world where characters operate. I would love for a new character to show up in Tekken, be totally separate from everything, and give us a new fighting style, a new idea, a new story, a new design, and just show us a new side of Tekken that we haven't seen before. Marduk is a really cool character, but in my opinion, we could have both. Why waste a new challenger with Marduk's successor when you could bring back Marduk in Season 1 and have a new character in Season 2? Once the developers decides to release Armor King's bio, that will give us enough information to really try and piece together what's happening with these characters. What story elements are they going to keep? What story elements are they going to get rid of? But then also, will it give us a definitive answer to what happened between Armor King and Marduk, or will it dodge around it? I mean, just going back to some of the previous bios, if you think about what happened with Zhao Yu and Claudio, those two characters teamed up at the end of Tekken 7 and they went on this journey. But when Zhao Yu's story was released, they dodged around the inclusion of Claudio so much. They didn't say the name, they didn't say the character, they didn't say nothing. They made it as obscure as possible, and they probably will do the same thing with Armor King. But also, to that point, I would love for the developers, once these characters are re-released or released, I would love for them to go back and fill in those missing pieces of story, because I feel like the bio is some of the most important parts of the story for Tekken 8. But when they make it so obscure because they don't want to ruin the next reveal or give too much away, I think it would be interesting to revisit them later on and give a full telling of what's happening with these characters going from 6, 7, and 8, because these characters are kind of on a straight trajectory, but it's kind of choppy, and sometimes you have to read into the details to piece it all together.